Sometimes I catch myself thinking I must be a magnet for bizarre suburban drama, but honestly, if there's a world record for the most outrageous abuse of HOA authority, I swear our former president Veronica has got to be in the running for first place. Before I get too deep into this, you ever had an HOA nightmare? Drop it in the comments and let me know where you're watching from. Because this story is about to take you from jaw-dropped shock to that deep, satisfying kind of laughter you only get when justice finally lands a solid punch. If you've ever wondered what it's like to come home from the vacation of a lifetime only to find your backyard looking like a combination of a junkyard and a yard sale from hell, oh, buckle up because I have lived that reality. So here's how it starts. Picture me a freelance historical cartographer working long, lonely hours mapping out places I'll probably never see in person, saving up every spare dime for almost a decade to finally take this 3-week Mediterranean cruise. This was supposed to be my break from HOA emails from lawns that have to be exactly 2 inches high from the neighbor who measures my mailbox with a tape measure just to be petty. I left my home in what I thought was safe, responsible shape, lawn mowed, alarm set. Even let the HOA president Veronica know I'd be gone because, hey, that's just being neighborly, right? She gave me this smile tight, fake, the kind where her eyes narrow behind those designer glasses, and you just know she's already judging you for something you haven't even done yet. That's Veronica, always in a power suit, always stepping out of her Escalade like she's running for office, and always running the HOA like it's her own little fiefdom. But whatever, I didn't think too much about it. Off I went gelato in Italy, walking ancient ruins, eating my weight in bread, zero thoughts of property lines or passive-aggressive newsletters. Pure freedom. Fast forward 3 weeks and there I am, jet-lagged but happy in a taxi, winding through my neighborhood, ready to drag my suitcases in and sleep for 12 straight hours. Only as we turn onto my cul-de-sac, my heart drops. From down the street I can see a mess, like an actual mess, spilling out from my backyard and across the flagstone terrace. At first I'm thinking maybe a tornado hit just my house or maybe my tired brain is seeing things. But as the taxi stops, I realize no, I am wide awake. My backyard looks like a cross between a swap meet and a landfill. Old exercise bikes, boxes that look like they're growing their own mushrooms, a faded sofa, piles of kids' toys, bags of what I can only describe as smells like charity shop on a hot day, even a sad little doghouse sitting front and center like the star of some tragic play. I have this split-second moment of panic where I actually check the house number. Nope. Still mine, still my bird feeder, just now buried under a stack of old tires. The taxi guy is trying not to laugh as I just stand there on the driveway, keys in hand, staring. I felt like I'd landed in a reality show, Hoarders HOA edition. I start to get this slow burn anger rising up. Who would do this? Why then? Across the street, I catch sight of Veronica's house. Perfect, untouched, her Escalade gleaming in the driveway, not a single stray leaf on her lawn. That's when the penny drops. I pay the taxi, drag my bags in, and before anything else, I grab my phone and start walking the perimeter taking photos. It wasn't just a few random things, this was deliberate. Someone had turned my backyard into the community's personal self-storage. Now I try to be a reasonable person. I tell myself maybe there's an explanation, maybe someone made a mistake. But as I get inside, the weird smell hits me. My house still felt like home, but also like it had been invaded. The phone is blinking. First message is my sister, second is Veronica, and honestly, the second I hear her syrupy voice, I know this is about to get wild. Just a heads up, she says, like she's telling me the mail is late. We had a bit of a community storage situation, so we used your lovely spacious backyard as a temporary solution. Hope you don't mind. Click. No apology, no question, just straight up letting me know that while I was gone, she'd turned my backyard into a dumping ground. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I saved the voicemail because my years as a cartographer taught me always keep your receipts. The next morning, fueled by too much coffee and righteous anger, I headed next door to Carol. She's a retired librarian, generally keeps to herself, but she knows everything that happens on our street. She sees my face and immediately says, "Oh, honey, you're back. I saw all that stuff, but I didn't know what to do." Turns out Veronica had announced at some half-baked beautification committee meeting, just her and Agnes, her sidekick, that my yard was generously volunteered as the overflow spot for everyone's spring cleaning junk. There was even a sign-up sheet. Most people just went along because, well, Veronica had this way of framing every crazy idea as for the good of the community, and if you disagreed, you basically hated togetherness and puppies and America itself. I thanked Carol, her info was gold. The more I learned, the more determined I became. So I dug into the HOA rules. Yes, I'm that person with a digital folder of covenants, conditions, and bylaws. Hours later, eyes crossing, I found exactly what I expected. Not one single line that said the HOA or the president or anybody could use my yard as a community storage dump. In fact, there were pages about nuisance abatement and no unauthorized storage. Veronica had not just bent the rules, she'd shattered them and was now breakdancing on the pieces. That's when I called Sarah, an old college friend turned property lawyer. Her reaction? Dead silence then. She did. What is she out of her mind? She confirmed, my rights were rock solid. Document everything. Don't let them push you. You know what I mean? I had a plan now. Step 1. Certified letter to the HOA laying it all out. My absence. The unauthorized use, the exact voicemail from Veronica transcribed, thank you very much. The violations, the demand 72 hours to remove every item or it's considered abandoned and I'll handle it however I see fit. I made sure the tone was cold and legal, not angry though. Inside, I was seething. Then a polite but very firm sign on my front gate telling everyone that anything left past the deadline would be disposed of, no exceptions. A few sheepish neighbors showed up like the young Hendersons dragging a broken crib and apologizing for believing Veronica. I told them next time maybe check with the actual homeowner before you park your stuff in their yard. They looked mortified. Others were less friendly. One guy, who owned the world's ugliest recliner, muttered about no community spirit as he hauled it away. My community spirit does not extend to being the local landfill, thanks. 3 days later, the deadline passed. Most of the stuff was still there. I watched Veronica's house, half expecting her to show up and go full soap opera villain, but nothing. No call, no apology, not even a passive-aggressive note. That's when the auction idea hit me. If they abandoned their stuff, I'd just sell it. Legal satisfying and the perfect way to make a point. I double-checked with Sarah, read up on the law, documented every single item, photographed everything, even cataloged it into lots with brutally honest descriptions. Then I printed flyers, public auction, abandoned goods, all proceeds to cover removal costs. Whatever's left goes to charity. I posted the flyers everywhere, even one on Veronica's windshield. I called the local police non-emergency line, explained everything, and the officer actually laughed at the story, telling me as long as I had documentation, I was fine. I even had Carol write a short statement about what she'd witnessed. Friday night, my backyard looked like the world's weirdest yard sale setup. Saturday morning, the neighborhood turned out in force, people I'd never met, bargain hunters. The Hendersons waving sheepishly from their yard, even a local antiques guy who wanted to see the possibly haunted rocking chair I'd advertised. Then at 9:48, sharp Veronica screeched up in her Escalade, Agnes at her heels, looking like she was about to call in the National Guard. She stormed up, demanding to know what this circus was. I picked up my megaphone. Yeah, I was prepared and announced, "Welcome to the public auction of abandoned goods. If anyone objects, I have all the paperwork right here." Veronica sputtered, tried to claim it was community assets, but I wasn't having it. After you failed to act, the items are now considered abandoned by law. Unless you want to buy them all back, the auction is happening. The crowd loved it. People actually cheered. She threatened to call the cops. I told her, go ahead. I already did. She froze. The auction rolled on rusty golf clubs, boxes of vinyl, that hideous floral sofa. A group of college students bought it for their new apartment and posed for selfies. The doghouse went to a woman who volunteered at the animal shelter. I announced the proceeds would go to the shelter, which got another round of applause. Even the guy with the recliner grumbled, but eventually shrugged, realizing he wasn't going to win this one. By the end, my yard was empty, well, almost. No one wanted the boxes of what I can only assume was ancient paperwork mixed with trash. I called a junk removal service and, as promised, sent the bill to the HOA addressed directly to Veronica with copies of everything as documentation. The gossip mill exploded. Apparently the HOA treasurer, Arthur, who usually just rubber-stamped whatever Veronica wanted, finally found his backbone and told her they had no choice but to pay or risk small claims court. The bill was paid. I sent a nice chunk of the proceeds to the animal shelter and bought myself a new climbing rose for the fence, just as a subtle reminder. The real satisfaction, though, came in the days after the story of the auction spread like wildfire. Suddenly, neighbors weren't afraid of Veronica anymore. Mr. Henderson got bold, started questioning her at meetings, Carol nominated him for the board, and people actually backed him up. Agnes tried to play innocent, but no one was buying it anymore. Veronica, stripped of her power, hung on for a while, but couldn't handle the blow to her ego. She eventually sold her house and moved to a gated community in another state where hopefully her version of community spirit gets her the welcome she deserves. My backyard is peaceful again, my roses are thriving, my new bench sits where that hideous sofa used to be, and yeah, I've become the unofficial HOA rule expert around here. The new board actually listens people talk things out, and no one's backyard gets used as free storage anymore. Sometimes it takes a little suburban warfare to restore some sanity. I guess the real lesson is this: never underestimate the power of one ticked-off homeowner with a binder full of evidence and a megaphone. So was I too harsh? Or did Veronica get what she deserved? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you've ever battled HOA madness yourself, I want to hear your story. Hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Trust me, the suburbs never run out of drama.